Hi, everyone. My name is Joanna Veronkovich. I am the faculty director here at the Center for Cultural Affairs, along with my colleagues, Professor Doug Noonan and Professor Michael Rushton. And we're very excited to start our Workshop in Cultural Affairs series again this semester. We have a really exciting series, so I do hope you take a look at our schedule. We have 6 speakers over the course of this semester, ranging from a lot of different disciplines, a lot of topics. So we are super excited to have everybody with us. But I'll stop talking and I will introduce our first speaker for today, Léonie Hénaut. And this is our solo speaker because unfortunately her co-author, Lena, from Columbia University, is not able to join us. She's ill today. So Léonie Hénaut is from French National Center for Scientific Research and is a professor of sociology there. And today we are hearing from Léonie about her co-authored article about polyoccupationalism that I'm excited to hear your presentation on. And I've read the article and I'm sure we'll have many questions. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Léonie, and you can take the floor.
Okay. Thank you very much, Joanna. So I'm going to share my screen. Here we go. So I'm very happy to be able to introduce you today to a concept we coined to describe the tendency of workers to identify with multiple occupations at the same time. So a phenomenon we call polyoccupationalism. So this is a phenomenon you are all familiar with. You can think of a yoga teacher / dancer who occasionally does some fashion modeling, or an architect, interior designer who work in a small firm. And this is not only in the art world, but all over. There are lots of conversations today on / workers, portfolio workers, or portfolio careers across the industries. Yet, we found that this phenomenon is understudied, and this is why we wanted to offer a comprehensive and conceptual understanding of it and reflect on its broader implications. So the question is really, what does that mean to identify with multiple occupations at the same time? So I'm the first author on this paper, but I really want to acknowledge that this is highly collaborative work I have done with Lena from Teachers College at Columbia University and Fabien Accominotti from University of Wisconsin in Madison. And so I'm really, Jennifer is really sorry to miss this. She's really in the team, she's really the arts person, and I'm more the work and occupation person, but all combined with we really enjoyed doing this project, and I hope it's gonna interest you. The talk is based on a paper that has recently been published in the American Sociological Review last fall. So my goal today is really to interest you in reading the paper. So I won't go into too much details, and instead I will focus on the main findings and the implications. So I hope we'll have a discussion also on the what it may think about, and what would be the next step in research, and also practical implications. So to introduce you to this project, I would like to start with a quote by Everett Hughes, who was a professor at the University of Chicago in the middle of the 20th century and a sociologist of work and occupations. So he famously wrote that people's work is one of the things by which they are judged, and certainly one of the more significant things by which they judge themselves. Many people in our society work in named occupations. The names are a combination of price tag and calling card. So this quote tells us that occupational identification is important for our social identity because it places us on two counts. On the one hand, it describes people's area of expertise. So this is a calling card part. And on the other, it locates people within a hierarchized system of social stratification. So this is a price tag part. And I would like you to remember these two classic dimensions of the division of labor. So the functional or horizontal dimension versus the hierarchical or vertical dimension, because I will come back to it later. So in this quote, Hughes also distinguishes occupations as lucky for both external identification and self-identification. And here we focus on self-identification. So what do we know about how people self-identify with occupations? So scholars have long documented how occupational self-identifications issues from educational and professional socialization, as well as from workers' embeddedness in the social organization of labor, which is ever-changing. In the earliest days of sociology, Durkheim conceptualized occupations as cohesive social groupings or small classes resulting from the division of labor, the specialization of labor. However, by the middle of the 20th century, occupations and occupational solidarity took a step back to let the organization man rises because so many workers spent their entire careers laboring for one employer and one only. But over time, though, new post-industrial forms of work organization entailed the proliferation of contingent and contract-based labor or non-standard forms of employment and project-based work and organization of labor, which is less bureaucratic and hierarchical, and which is for those students of the art world was very core to the organization of labor in the creative industry. So, so we ask, how has this latest shift in the social organization of labor affected occupational self-identification? So to this question, existing answers subside into two extreme positions. So for some scholars, we live in a post-occupational society in which occupational affiliations are no longer salient or relevant. So there's a group of scholars arguing that people can only develop weak occupational identities because they juggle multiple jobs and frequently change employers or jobs, so they have boundaryless career and they can't really relate to any occupational community. In contrast, others argue that these same transformations resulted in the occupationalization or Durkheimianization of the labor market. And so in these approaches or theories, the dissolution of durable ties to organizations left workers with a specialized knowledge and occupational community as their only stable source of identity to hold on to. In our paper, we consider a third possibility that in the post-industrial era, workers tend to simultaneously identify with multiple occupations, a phenomenon we call polyoccupationalism. So as I said earlier, there are lots of conversations, scholarly or not, about slash workers, the rise of gig labor, and the blurring of occupational boundaries. Yet our understanding of the polyoccupationalism has been very limited, and there are two main reasons for that. One is that most occupational surveys are single entry, which simply prohibits respondents to express polyoccupational identities because we are asking them for their primary or only occupation. So it precludes researchers to study polyoccupationalism or multiple occupational identification. And the second reason is that occupations have been conceptualized as distinct and exclusive communities. So not only we can study polyoccupationalism, but we can even think of polyoccupationalism, because the only way we can think of occupational identification is as a form of exclusive belongingness to one group, one community. So our goals are threefold. First, to provide evidence of polyoccupationalism. Two, to probe its relationship with post-industrial forms of work using a survey on creative workers. And three, to explore its variations across the occupational hierarchy, that is, how it takes different forms at the top and bottom of the hierarchy. So to achieve these goals, we took advantage of a large survey called SNAP for Strategic National Arts Alumni Project. So I'm sure you know about this survey. And so as you may know, the survey reached out to anyone who participated in an US arts program, whether it was in high school, college, or at the graduate level, in any discipline ranging from dance to museum work, to fine art, to architecture. And Jennifer Lena was part of the research team who designed the survey, and we used the first three waves of responses collected in 2015, 16, and 17. So this survey was really good for us because, very importantly for our purpose, it has multiple entry occupational questions, which is very unique. So respondents were asked to describe their work using as many occupational categories as they wanted in a list of 43 items. And respondents who selected more than one occupation were also asked to indicate the one in which they spend the most of their work time. So we have their self-reported primary occupation in addition of their selection of occupations. And for our analysis, we focus on 18 occupations out of 43, which are those detailed creative occupations that I will get back to them in a minute. So to finish with the data presentation, I wanted to add that we complemented the responses to the SNAP survey with data on these 18 occupations that we derived from ONET resource centers. So for those of you who are not familiar with this source of data, it is a very rich source on occupations. So all of them, and importantly for our purpose, it describes their position on the social status scale, so the prestige associated with the occupations and the tasks typically performed by the occupations members. So we use that in addition to the SNAP survey. So our main sample, so because we focused on the 18 so people working in these 18 occupations and currently working, so we removed all the retired people and the students, and so we focus on almost 15,000 respondents and their occupational identification within these 18 possible items. So here you have a frequency distribution of these people by their primary occupation. or the occupation that they claim that their primary or sole one. So for your information, and this is one of the first results, our respondents in this sample reported 1.7 occupations on average, and 44% reported 2 occupations or more out of these 18. So in our terms, we have 44% polyoccupationalists in this sample. So as you can see, all occupations are arts related, yet pretty varied in terms of working conditions, educational level, licensing requirement, and social status. So I let you read the labels, but we have lots of K-14, K-12 arts educators, musicians, writers, web designers, sound technicians, etc., etc. So now what do we do with this data? So the first thing we wanted to test is the association between polyoccupationalism and post-industrial forms of labor, in particular contract work and project-based work. So the reason we seek for these associations in particular is that individuals who work on contract have more jobs or gigs, and therefore more opportunities to explore a wider section of the occupational spectrum. So there's many research supporting this idea. And I put a quote here from one of the SNAP respondents illustrating this idea. So the quote is from a freelance worker who reported 6 occupations. And in one of the open-ended answers in the SNAP survey, he explained that he developed all these a variety of skill sets that has so he said, now having a variety of skill sets has kept me working steadily in the freelance field. And he reported 3 design occupations: architects, graphic designer, and interior designer, and other arts, 3 other arts occupations. So he clearly links having a variety of skill sets with working steadily in the freelance field. So this association between polyoccupationalism and contract-based work. Our second hypothesis says that polyoccupationalism is likely to be associated with project-based labor. Whatever the respondent's employment status, whether it is a contract worker or salaried worker, full-time salaried worker. And here is a quote, so it's difficult to illustrate this idea, but I picked a quote from an opera singer who wrote that working with visual artists, film directors, choreographers, I have found that we all have a similar goal, and that is to create an emotional response from those who participate in viewing, listening, and experiencing what we create. And she reported 3 occupations and self-identified primarily as a musician. But here's, yes, so our second hypothesis of a link between polyoccupationalism and project-based work is a little trickier than the first one about contract work, but we think that working in projects forces people or enables people to add skills to their skill sets for the sake of the project, which may be conducive to claim more occupations. And here, the opera singer suggests that she must collaborate with other professionals and push her own boundaries to create an emotional response. So that's the end goal. That's the project's goal. So to test these ideas with our data, we just ran a regression on the number of occupations reported by respondents. And we found that net of other factors, so individual as well as occupational factors, the number of occupations is higher among respondents who reported contract work and who are more engaged in projects. So now that this is solved, we also wanted to explore whether polyoccupationalism assumes different forms across the occupational structure, in particular at the top and at the bottom of the occupational hierarchy. So this is a representation of the occupational structure plotted along its two dimensions. So now is the time to remember Everett Hughes' quote from earlier. So you have the horizontal or functional dimension from left to right, and the vertical hierarchical dimension from top to bottom. So occupations that are close to one another on the vertical axis have similar status. So for instance, in our sample, at the top, you have architects and theater managers, and at the bottom, you have craft artists and photographers. And occupations that are close to one another on the horizontal axis tend to share tasks, like actors and dancers, for example, while those far apart have no overlap, like dancers and interior designers, for instance. So now, if we focus on polyoccupationalists only, that is the respondents in our sample, who reported at least 2 occupations, our sample for this second set of results goes down to 6,800 respondents. So what we found, looking at these polyoccupationalists, is that their selections of occupations are not random. So first, we found that people whose primary occupation places them at the bottom of the hierarchy have a tendency to report occupations that are not very different in terms of the tasks they perform, so relatively close functionally, but distant on the status scale. So this is what we call status stretch. So basically, low status polyoccupationalists tend to engage in status stretch. In contrast, polyoccupationalists who are higher up in the occupational hierarchy, according to their primary occupation, have a tendency to stretch expertise relatively more, but they don't stretch their status. So this is what we call expertise stretch. And here you can see, yes, a representation of that. So the status stretch finding may be easily accommodated by status management theories. Basically, people at the bottom want to enhance their status, while at the top, they don't want to lose any status. So they only stretch their expertise and pick occupations in the upper hand of the occupational status hierarchy. An implication of that, however, is that polyoccupationalism blurs the occupational hierarchy at the bottom, while at the top, it cements it. The expertise stretch finding, on the other hand, echoes the idea that higher status workers have more autonomy at work and more resources to expand their skill sets. So these are results we can find in the literature. Yet, what we learn is that such expansion percolates into the aggrandizement of their identity, and this is why we refer to that behavior as entrepreneurial, while the less well-resourced hustlers use a narrower range of skills, but engage in status stretch instead. So here, this is the main results that we got. To conclude, I have 3 take-home points for you. So first, that post-industrial work or the flexibilization of the organization of labor, which is which has been observed for a long time in the creative industries, and which tend to reach high level of flexibilization, both the flexibilization of employment through non-standard form of employment and careers, and the flexibilization of the organization of work through via the project-based organization of work. This post-industrial work correlates with polyoccupationalism, which means that this is a phenomenon that may certainly increase and shape the experience of identity of many workers, including far beyond the creative industries. Second, polyoccupationalism takes different forms, which open many avenues for research on the subjective experience of having multiple occupational identities, on the perception of the occupational structure, and on the dynamics of occupations who host polyoccupationalists. And more broadly, the mere fact that polyoccupationalism exists means that very practically we need to measure it with appropriate tools. And so we really call for multiple entry questions in occupational survey. And we are very grateful for the SNAP survey to exist, but it would be great if all of occupational survey now include these multiple entry questions. And the existence of polyoccupationalism makes us reflect on our conceptualization of occupations as exclusive and bounded community. So now that we know that people can identify with multiple of these, we need to change how we think about occupations and expertise. So I thank you for your attention. I'm very curious to hear what you think and discuss also the practical implications and avenues for research that you may find interesting. So thank you.
Thank you, Léonie. And let me just remind everyone that you can feel free to either raise your hand to ask a question or put your question into the chat, and I'll be moderating the conversation. So I'll start with a question, and I'm sure other people have this as well, but you're looking at a really specific sample of one occupation, artists. And so a lot of what you talk about certainly rings true for this particular occupation, but I wonder whether or not it would ring true for other occupations. So I was sort of thinking through potential examples in my head as you went through the presentation, and I thought, if you ran this study on accountants, are we finding that there's an expertise stretch? We see accountants as hedge fund managers or something. Or if you ran this on lawyers, are we seeing that there's that expertise stretch too? Maybe lawyers and politicians, right? But I'm wondering if you've had any moment to think about how this idea expands to other occupational groups.
Yeah. Well, thank you for this. This is, the very important question. So we thought about it. And so basically what the challenge with this project was really to show that even if the arts sample of occupation must be an ideal research site to look at this phenomenon, it could be generalized or offer other conceptual and results to think of other fields. And so I'm happy that you already had some great hypotheses about accountants and lawyers. So my first answer is, yes, we want to study all of these fields, but we need data for it. And so that's a real challenge, like to get some good surveys or, with multiple entry question. What the example that you just picked I think are very interesting because they are really echoing the theory that we try to put on, like the elite occupations stretching their expertise at the top. So I think all of the examples that we can think of usually are, good with the theory. In terms of the generalizability of the finding within the research, it's like we don't have anything we didn't find anything that would prevent the generalizability of the findings. So we even controlled for what you can think as the most creative, the most artistic occupations in the sample, and so we can kind of control for some variables assessing the creativity of these different occupations. So the good thing with this sample is that it's pretty varied. So architects versus dancer, for instance, it's very different occupations, and also different if you think of their relationship to the arts and the creative labor. And so we were, able to control for some of this. So I think but with this study, I think the challenge is really to be able to replicate it and to add more legs to it. And so so lawyers, accountants. So there's one thing that we found with this study is maybe what prevents people to engage in polyoccupationalism, or what prevent them to report all their other occupations. And so the licensing part was important. So in licensing, there's 3 licensed occupations in this sample, and we found that licensing, respondents in licensing occupations tend to underreport polyoccupationalism. So apparently, accountants and lawyers are licensed occupations, so it must preclude a lot of expression of polyoccupational identities. But if you think about it, it's going pretty well. I would be also more interested in replicating this kind of research on less educated occupations. So I'm thinking of, delivery and selling occupations, and so how do you stretch status or expertise more in these kind of occupations?
Great, thank you. Yeah, the licensing point is a really good one, and it might just be that licensing is a proxy for the amount of time or investment you have to make in a certain occupation too. But that's a really nice point. Tal.
Thank you very much, Léonie. I read this paper. It's a great paper, I think, and I even had the opportunity to present some tables to art students I'm teaching. So my question is about this phenomena that you find of polyoccupationalism in people who work in artistic occupations. And I wondered how, or to what extent some of this phenomena in artists can stem from what we can say, maybe call polygenrealism of the art itself. Because just for an example, I recently analyzed a survey of performing artists, and we had this question to them: how would you classify genre-wise your last production? and some people, and they had the opportunity to mark more than one answer at the same time. So quite a few answers were like multidisciplinary. It said it's a play-based production, but it's also a musical theater and also a dance theater. So, I mean, art itself, we're used to think about art in these silos. There's dance and there's theater and there's music, but actually many artistic pieces are a combination of few of these genres or these domains or these artistic domains, which are fused together in a way that artistically maybe even cannot be really separated. So then an artist might think of himself or herself as belonging to several categories which are presented before them, like I'm doing theater, so I'm a theater man or theater person, but also I'm singing, so I'm also a musician in the same vein. And so like there's something unified in the artistic piece or artistic production, but when you make them think of their occupation as belonging to several categories, they will report polyoccupationalism because they're doing some different things at the same time. Of course, they will not explain all the phenomena, and of course there's polyoccupationalism, but some of this phenomena within artists stems from something which is maybe a bit different. Could it be the case?
Yeah, thank you for this. Yeah. So my perception is that it's the opposition between, you know, if you think of your expertise or your as opposed to the product that you make, and in the art when you and the relationship, I think so the relationship between these two is really about the organization of labor. So it's if the goal is to produce a piece of art, whatever, which is multidisciplinary, trans-category, etc., you tend to place the product or the project or above everything else. And so this is why you tend to push the boundaries of everything and to get rid of any sorts of classifications, because you want to create something and you need a lot of different skills and different people to make it. So I think that's part of the reasoning that we try to develop using this project-based organization of labor being core to the creative industry, even the arts. And this is the feature that we can use to explain the mechanism that we can devise to explain why in the art, but in any work context that in which work is organized through the production of some project, some service, or some piece of work. And this is the driven part of the organization of labor, as opposed to some siloed organization where you are in charge of being good at what you do and being the expert of one thing. So we try to connect this to the organization of labor, as opposed to, which is very proeminent in the art world. So that would explain these high rates of polyoccupationalism. The other answer that I can give you is that we also found some in the open-ended questions, some resistance to from respondents or from artists to be categorized in one occupation and one only. And so this may be particular to artists. So this resistance to being classified. So people say, I don't want to be put in to be pigeonholed. I want to express myself and my which is of course unique and can't be summarized. And sometimes we can interpret polyoccupationalism also as the expression of this resistance, because they will take multiple answer to claim that they can be pigeonholed in one only, even though they've been pigeonholed their whole life through training or on the job, on the labor market, and yes, this kind of thing. Well.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay, thank you, Léonie, for a really interesting paper. My question might seem a bit naive, and my apologies for that, but I'm not a sociologist. And so I guess I'm trying to understand whether there is a claim being made that this has changed over time. The title of the paper uses the word post-industrial, but I'm not exactly sure what that means, because of course we still have manufacturing industry, and we could still have people who work for Ford or Boeing or Dow who have polyoccupationalism, like that can happen within manufacturing firms. And even when it comes to our arts occupations, with the exception of web designer, these are all old jobs. They've been around for a very, very long time, some of them hundreds of years. So I guess this is a long-winded way of saying my question is there a claim that something has been changing in an important way with regards to the results that you find?
Thank you for this. Yeah, but the claim is that there's an association between what we call post-industrial forms of work and polyoccupationalism. And because we know that post-industrial forms of work are proliferating, we suspect that polyoccupationalism may increase as a result of the increase in the prevalence of post-industrial forms of work. And these post-industrial forms of work are usually defined as the increase, there's at least the two features that I am talking about. So one is about the flexibilization of employment. So even in industrial or manufacturing jobs, we have a rise of post-industrial forms of work because we have a rise of non-standard forms of employment. So standard forms of employment is usually considered as workers having full-time salaried job. And so everything that goes different from that is considered non-standard. So contingent workers, part-time workers, jobs that the multiple job holding situations, all of these are considered post-industrial forms of employment. And within the firms, the way work is organized, so the division of the organization of labor is organized, there's this shift from hierarchical and bureaucratical organization of work towards more collaborative and project-based form of work, so across industries. And this is, the second feature of the post-industrial era. So these are, but I agree that the industrial part in these appellations are So we also talk about post-Fordist, post-industrial. Yes, this is or new economy. It's all of this is just to talk about this flexibilization of employment and work organizations. Did I answer to your question?
Yeah,
You're not convinced. I can see that
I
you're
guess a
not
little bit. I
convinced.
mean, that helps me understand it a bit. Again, I think it's hard to, it's difficult to chart in time because industries are different. So film production, for example, has been project-based since the 1960s.
Yep.
It's a very long time that it has been essentially a gig economy. There aren't really trends in self-employment in the US economy. It stays around 10 or 11% of the labor force pretty constantly. So it's not really changing that much. And so I guess different industries are different. And so I'm just trying to get a picture of how the sort of hypothesis of how this is changing over time. But I will let others ask.
Yeah, but there's no, I have to say that there's no real changing hypothesis. It's more like associations. And so if we have an increase in these forms of employment of labor, or in those industry where it's important, the hypothesis is that you'll find more polyoccupationalism. Yes, no. The thing with polyoccupationalism is really a question of measurement, and we won't be able to show that there's an increase, or because we can't really compare with other data so from the past. So yeah.
Jessica, I think I have your question correct, but just correct me if I'm wrong in the chat. I think Jessica's asking about the degree. So if we think about occupation as partly about participation in a distinct community of practitioners, to what degree do we see that form of participation among polyoccupationalists? So are these polyoccupationalists, and maybe you don't have the data to comment on this, but are these polyoccupationalists also engaging in this sort of community building and professionalization in these different distinct occupations, as much as somebody who is just in one occupation? I mean, did you see that type of behavior taking place? I think I got that question right.
So you mean, yes, when you have multiple involvements, yes, do you participate in annual meetings or social networks and stuff? Yes. So that's really a question. Like, to me, it's so there's a question of, is your involvement, is it of different nature?
Yeah.
Or is it the intensity, and so for me, it's still open, I have, what I'm working right now is really about trying to figure out whether we need to think a new occupational identification and get rid of this idea of belongingness to a community. And I'm trying to think of other forms of relationship to a community, which would not be belongingness, but more like, and we need to get rid of this idea of belongingness to a community, and instead think of occupational identity as something that has an involvement in network of expertise.
Mm-hmm.
So network of expertise being all sorts of actors, human and non-human actors. So you'll have an involvement with community, so social network or formal association that are like the traditional way of doing professional mobilization, but you also have places equipments, objects, representations that all or form of training or all other sorts of connection that is not that makes you feel like you are an expert in a field, or you are at least have an involvement within a network of expertise. Yes, so that's where I'm at now.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Neil, I think I saw your hand.
Yeah, as probably one of the elders in this research community as an economist, I'd like to go back for a minute to Michael's comment. This issue of your polyoccupationalism in the arts has been studied for decades. Some of my earliest work 40 years ago, where we did our own surveys, dealt with the issues of occupations, multiple occupations being held by artists. I wasn't the originator of that work. David Throsby in Australia has been doing this for decades as well. And as Michael sort of suggested, what you found, at least in the arts, really hasn't changed very dramatically, or doesn't appear to have, based on what you're saying and what we have found. Now, our details are not as much as what SNAP has. Oh, by the way, I was one of the original developers with the SNAP people, consultants on their surveys. So, I mean, in part, some of that idea of looking at these other occupations comes from the work that others have done in the economics discipline. So I would go back to Michael as well and raise the question as to, has this really changed? And from what I'm hearing, I haven't read your paper, so I can't really go into details, but from what I'm hearing is really you haven't found anything all that different than what has existed for 50, 60 or more years in the arts in the United States. By the way, if you're looking for an occupation, a primary occupation that has a very high rate of this polyoccupationalism in the United States, look at firefighters, okay? Why are they polyoccupational? Because they work 2 days, maybe 3 days a week because of their shifts. They work 2 24-hour days, and they have 5 days to do something else. And they end up doing having all sorts of other second and third occupations, plumbers, some of those kind of craft occupations and so on. So if you're looking for a comparison, and not a very well-educated comparison for a primary occupation, look at firefighters. But your work is good. I'm glad to see this kind of work is still going on, but to think of it as necessarily being something that hasn't been explored before, I think you need to go further in other disciplines. There are lots of this has been going on. As I say, we did it when we did surveys, because you're right, there is no truly representative sample of the population that I'm aware of, and I could be corrected, that ask those questions where you can get basically a nice representative sample of the occupations, of the people, of the workers in the labor market, to really address this in a systematic way. But thanks for the work you're doing. I think it's great.
Well, thank you for the ideas and references, and I agree that the first part of the paper, like linking the type of employment and works and with this polyoccupationalism is not new. I'd be happy to dig more into what you were just talking about, to see whether there's some results that I omit to look at regarding the variations across the occupational structure or across occupations in the forms of this occupational selection. So I think that's what's maybe more original, like try to distinguish, to try to different patterns, to identify different patterns of polyoccupationalism, and try to think what's going on in the occupational structure, and also as of the, all the theories of class identification and the, changes in how people relate to social groupings in general. I think if we can find out that polyoccupationalism takes different forms, yes, this is important work. But yeah, so I will look into that. Thank you, and thank you for the firefighters. I think all these, also the seasonal workers are, good research sites, like because they have to combine different occupation. So thank you for this. Thank you.
Then last two questions. One is from Amy, and it's how polyoccupationalism might differ in countries where health insurance is not or is connected to employment. And what maybe you had data in the SNAP data. I'm not quite sure about health insurance, because obviously we know that many people span across different jobs and occupations to get benefits.
Yes, that's good questions. It's true that we tended to try to think, to have a comprehensive approach of this phenomenon. So including both the situation where workers have different jobs in different occupations. So because they have to get multiple sources of income, but also within one single job, they have their work span multiple occupational areas. So it's and it's difficult to understand because sometimes people comes to this project with this multiple job holding situation in mind. Others come to listen to the project with this idea of polyvalent workers, or people doing different things within the context of a single job. And so with this polyoccupationalism thing, the idea is really to get rid of this job driven definition of work, but more having this interest into understanding occupational identity. So how do people define the work they do, or the work they do in one or different jobs? So that's, but the healthcare, yes, that should be a control variable for sure. And I'm not sure about the SNAP. Yes, there's one question in the SNAP survey, but yes, I will check. That's a good idea. Thank you.
And I think we have time just for one last question, Joyce.
Thank you. And I'm late, so I'm sorry if this has kind of been covered, but whether you're saying that there's more or there's value in having more, and there are reasons why this works well, it seems to me one of the reasons there is not as much of it as there might be is simply because we don't have an education system that basically fosters collaboration. I'm talking about, I'm not necessarily talking about post, secondary education. I'm talking about, high schools and so forth. We don't have a system that really builds and feeds into collaboration, as well as certainly some areas at the university level do. So I think a lot of times we don't prepare young people for really being open to being interested in and being able to collaborate with other people in groups and utilize different talents that they might have. We tend to put more of a focus on a particular career path or pattern of intelligence, as opposed to, I think, really feeding collaboration. I'm involved in the arts area, and there's lots of research on the creativity that comes out of collaboration, and the real new things that happen as a result of collaboration. So I think one of the things that needs to be looked at is, you know, how can our current education system in America help, you know, foster more collaboration.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks. Léonie, do you want to say something in response or?
No, thank
Okay.
you so much for
Wonderful.
listening to this and for your questions.
Thank you, Léonie. Very great presentation. Obviously made us think a lot and have a lot of questions, which is the point of this. So thank you so much for being with us today. And thank you to everybody for all of your engagement. And I hope you'll join us next week when we have Andrew Zitzer and Joanna Taylor from Drexel and Arizona State University. So thanks again, Léonie. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Yeah.